Hey, good afternoon. This is Neophyte Studios. I'm Matthew Gordon. With me, I have an undergraduate here at SIUC, Zach Zappa, and we are going to demo for you an application here called VR Patients. Zach, why don't you give us a little information about it?
Just a little bit background on me. I'm a EMT student that just finished with my schooling and am nationally registered and have my license and everything. And I came across this program that is basically an EMT and paramedic training program. And so what it does is it puts an EMT or paramedic student into one of these many scenarios where they can practice their assessment and treatment skills of patients in a VR scenario. So you ask them questions, you pick the right medications to give them, and then it'll give you a grade at the end of how well you did, if you did everything correctly, what you did wrong, and if there was anything that you were absolutely supposed to do that you maybe missed. And so it gives you a lot more realistic version of how you can be tested on your assessment and treatment skills rather than just kind of speaking to a person that's pretending to be a patient.
Yeah, and I want to go ahead and thank the fine folks, the developers behind VR Patients, for offering us this demo. It's an absolutely fantastic program, and they were very generous with giving us access to this. So it is for Oculus Quest 2, and it works on browser as well. It looks like it's not quite publicly available at this point, which is understandable. It is pretty specialized training software. But once you get access through the company, through whatever program you're involved with, assumedly that's using it, you can download it straight from the Oculus Store. Additionally, you can play it on a desktop. So, Zach, you're going to walk us through one of these scenarios here?
Yeah, so we're going to, once you come in, you see this nice big old case list of different scenarios you can get. They are labeled with the main kind of treatment for what kind of ailments you would be receiving with your patients, and then whether or not they're advanced life support for paramedics or basic life support for EMTs. So we're going to go ahead and do this opioid overdose case that is meant for EMT students. So we just load it up through the menu here. Takes a minute.
And even like the starting area is a pretty nice environment.
Yeah, the little garage. And then as you're loading in, you'll get your sort of little bit of information that a dispatcher would give you as you're on the way to one of these scenes. You can see who you're treating and what the setting's going to be like.
And so, like, if we're in like the first part of this, the setup, right? How does it compare to the training you received?
Yeah, so normally, like, this training online is meant for people that are going on to take their national exams. And the way it would normally work is you would go into a room, and there would just be somebody that's going to be assessing you sitting in a chair, and they might have like a dummy patient on the floor or just somebody pretending to be a patient. And they would just kind of tell you all this information, and you would just kind of have to go through in your head and speak to them and tell them everything you would do to help them. Whereas in this, you're actually in the scenario and you have the patient in front of you and they can actually talk to you.
And when did you, go ahead, get started here. When did you complete your training? It was just recently, right?
Yeah, it was this summer.
This summer, okay. Mm-hmm. And we, for future's sake, we are streaming, it is October 8th, 2021 here.
Move my perspective back a little bit. Okay, so we have a patient in this subway. And so we're going to start by just putting on some personal protective equipment. Different scenarios will require you to wear certain things depending on what's wrong with the patient. If they had some sort of respiratory illness, it would most likely want you to put on goggles, a gown, and a mask to protect yourself. I believe this one only wants you to put on gloves, but we're just going to put everything on just in case. And then to start, we're going to assess the patient. She appears unconscious, so we're going to try to ask her a question.
The patient provides no answer.
And there's captioning on the bottom of what the patient and the program will tell you. So she provided no answer. So we're going to go ahead and check her oxygen levels, because having proper oxygen is very important. We have our monitor right here that we can grab and move around and place wherever we want in the space. I'm just going to set it right here for now. So I go ahead and see.
I think you almost knocked my water off the actual table.
Yeah, I had to adjust my boundary a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we see that her oxygen's low. So we're going to go ahead and go over to treatment and hit oxygen. And before we do that, actually, we'll turn on this is a CO2 monitor showing how much carbon dioxide she's breathing out. And so this also shows us that her respiration rate is pretty low too. So in that case, you would want to put her on a bag valve mask, which allows you to provide not only oxygen for her, but to breathe for her at an adequate rate. And this is just the amount of oxygen we'll be giving her, 15 liters per minute. And so in a regular testing scenario, like we do right now at Nationals, you would verbalize that you're going to do that to the person that's assessing you. You would start doing it, and then you would say, and now I'll pass this off to my partner.
Yeah.
And it's just assumed that that's going to still be going on for the remainder of the treatment. And so you can see on here, like my invisible partner is going to be taking this over for me. So you can move on with the rest of the treatment, just like you would in a normal exam. And
Can we get a close-up of that monitor?
Yeah, we can just move this right up here.
So that's a nice model they have.
Yeah, and they have multiple models for different monitors, and you can actually choose which one you want whenever you're setting up a scenario.
Let's do the ultimate test. What's the back of it look like? Any good?
Pretty good.
It's not bad.
I believe they're pretty accurately modeled.
Gotcha. Very
So,
nice.
Now if we go...
Good on you, VR patients.
So now if we check the rest of the vitals, we're going to set... we're going to put on a blood pressure cuff and set it to check every minute. Also check temperature and glucose, as well as the heart rate. And we'll also look at 12 leads. So this is a full cardiac, a full output of what her heart rhythm is. And so this is a little bit more helpful for paramedics. This isn't, you don't go as much depth into this as an EMT student, but this whole image that's put in, you can upload any image you want to give to the students that are in this scenario through the back end of the program, which we'll show later. And so this is just an image that was uploaded that is supposed to apply to this one scenario.
And like images like that, you can, and you'll show the back end later, but you can upload whatever you want as a teacher, I think, right?
Yep, you can give them anything you need.
Okay, cool.
So now we're going to go ahead and get our treatment now that we have all of our vitals. So this is, it did say at the beginning that this is an opioid overdose, but this patient is showing signs of one. Another way you can check that is through the pen light option, which I think is kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
It does have a little bit of a quirk where the patient actually has to sit up for you to do this, even though they are technically unconscious right now. But in an opioid overdose, patients will have pupils that are very constricted.
Sure.
And that's a very characteristic thing. So now in the scenario right now, I have a little light on me. And if we get up close and look at her pupils and shine a light.
Can you get even closer?
Yeah.
Right,
you can see that
right
they
up in there.
stay super constricted this whole time.
Yeah, where otherwise in this simulation they would actually dilate.
Yeah, where otherwise you would see them constrict once you shine the light on, and then once you move.
Or that's
away,
what I mean.
Yep.
This is why I'm a creative writer and I'm in healthcare. I don't know the difference between constricting and dilating.
So the treatment for this is the medication Naloxone, which is also known as Narcan. We're going to give it intranasally, just through the nose, at 2 milligrams. And so we just select our correct medication. There's a few others we could choose from here. And then also how you're going to give it. So you could either inject or give it through the nose. We want to give it through the nose in this situation. And give 2 milligrams. And then we'll just administer, since the medication has been administered. And now, what kind of makes this a little more realistic than your national scenarios is that in a national registry type exam, you would kind of just give the medication, and then you would just kind of ask the person that's assessing you, okay, I'm going to do my second round of vitals now. Like you start with one round of vitals like I've done here, give them their treatment, and then say, okay, I'm going to move on to my second round. And they just kind of immediately get better or get worse, depending on what you did. But in this, you actually just kind of have to keep monitoring them, because in real life, this medication isn't going to work the instant you give it to them. And so this is a lot more realistic in that you actually just have to wait and see their response. And then once she wakes up, we'll be able to actually ask her more questions and continue on like it would be in a normal situation, and not just she kind of just immediately gets better.
And you said before they immediately get better. You're not for your exam, right? You weren't working with a real patient. The instructor just kind of said the
instructor is just like, this fake patient that we made up is fine now, and she's awake and talking to you.
Right, and it's that dissonance, that can't be super effective when you're trying to practice.
Yeah, it definitely takes away from the realism a little bit. And and while that's not a huge part of this, is the the real benefit of a program like this is that it allows you to just go through the steps exactly as the national exams want you to.
Gotcha.
Because it grades you not only if you do everything right, but the order in which you do everything right. Like, you don't want to treat the whole patient and then put on your gloves, because it's kind of pointless then.
Right.
If I didn't put on my gloves first, I could do everything correctly, but this scenario would still fail me, because that's one of the critical things that you always have to do. And it's the exact same at the national level. And so it's just a lot more realistic way of doing these exams. Another thing we can do is we can go to a physical assessment. And this is something that the developers actually told me that they're working on quite a bit. Oh, okay, the patient is waking up. So in this scenario, put that on hold for a second.
Yeah.
We want to stop ventilating her, because it's very uncomfortable if you're being ventilated and you're awake.
Oh my
So
god.
stop that.
Her struggling
Yeah.
is pretty distressing.
It's a lot. Her oxygen's still low, so we're going to put her on a non-rebreather,
Okay.
which will just give her continuous oxygen flow that we're not continually pushing into her
Yeah.
lungs. And so we'll give it a minute. I believe if I ask her a question right now, it won't give me any sort of response yet.
The patient provides no answer.
Yeah. So
That's
what I was-
reasonable. She looks pretty preoccupied.
So what I was mentioning earlier was, before we do that, we're going to go ahead and transfer, and then this will take us into the ambulance. Another requirement is that you have to do this within a certain amount of time.
Oh yeah, do you have a timer?
Yeah, it is right up there. So
There you go.
have 15 minutes to complete each of these scenarios.
Right.
But so now we can look at really quickly the physical assessment portion of this. And so when speaking to the developer, this is actually something they said they are working on quite a bit right now in making this a lot more realistic. So currently, if we're assessing just how the patient looks and we click face, it'll just give us a description down here of what
Yeah.
we would see. Full pale and clammy, no jugular vein distension in the neck with where that vein is kind of popping out a bit. The chest.
Take a quick step to your left. Take a step to the left.
My
Get a
left,
little
your left.
closer to the sound of my voice.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, but so it'll just give us readouts of how everything looks. Don't have to go through all of these. However, in the future, I've been told with the next update, they're actually working on adding models for all of these characters where you can actually see all of this stuff that's wrong with them. So like, if I would look at her face, instead of just reading that it's cool, pale, and clammy, you know, I will see the sweat marks on her face and on her arms and everything. If it goes as far as if they have a decapitated leg, you know, you'll
Yeah.
see that. It'll be completely gone. And the models that they have working on for this are actually really, really impressive and look super realistic. And so they're constantly updating this to make it even more and more realistic. Like, this is by no means a finished, complete product yet, even though it works so well already. So now we can go ahead and go into the questions, and she's awake, so it gives us new questions to ask.
Amy,
How old are you?
29,
How many pounds do you weigh?
121
I'm not going to say all of these, we're
pounds.
just going to kind of run through
Female.
them.
I'm
But this is
not
just
really
getting a bit of a
sure.
background on what happened to the patient, so you can kind of figure out what led up to this and see if there's maybe any other treatments you would need to do.
On the subway, 2021,
So she knows where she's at. We know
Yeah.
that there's no sort of, there's most likely no sort of brain injury or anything super crazy that we need to deal with at the moment.
I didn't. I wasn't complaining of
So
anything.
now it gives us some more, now that we've asked her about that, it gives us some more questions to ask exactly how she's feeling and trying to describe that feeling.
I don't know. Not long ago. I feel sick. I'm not hurting. I don't know.
A lot of
I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
knows and I'm not sure's,
I feel better laying down.
which from what I've been told by some of my instructors in school, that can be very accurate.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just
No.
don't know. And this is all stuff that the person
Two.
designing these scenarios can change. They can change all of these questions and all the answers to
Can I
them.
just go home?
Yeah, and as a writer
I
here,
don't
that's
have a
something I'm very
problem.
particularly interested in.
Strawberries
Mhm.
make me itch.
Getting that accuracy, getting
don't know.
interesting things.
I don't have an illness.
I'll go through the
No.
rest of these. Oh, and apparently I missed something.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is actually helpful though, because I can go into, so it shows that I've gotten 20 out of 25
Yeah.
things correct on this. And there was one critical action that I missed. And so once we switch over to the desktop version, we'll be able to actually see what that was that I missed in this scenario. So if we just hit return to dispatch, and this is what your students will see
Yeah.
in a class that's teaching this. If we hit return to dispatch, it'll just take us back to the original menu right here. And then should we switch over to the other?
Yeah, go ahead, pop the headset off and we'll readjust things here. We'll do this live too, no fancy hold screens.
Should be relatively quick.
Yeah, it should be pretty quick here. And just take the filters off of Chrome. Enjoy black screen, everyone, for just a minute here. Just doing live editing, no big deal.
And of course, as soon as we do it live, I miss something in the scenario.
Well, yeah.
Alrighty.
I might even, it looks like the mic might be a little sensitive here. I'm just gonna turn this down a bit. How's that look? I hope that sounds good. We're not listening to any feedback. This is a pretty rough stream. Okay, it looks pretty good.
I'll back up a little bit from it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're in, this is about what an administrator running a class would see whenever they go into assign things to their students. So if we go into this tab, there won't be anything in here, but you can see in organization management, this is where you'll actually invite students to your class. It's all just through email. They get a link to it, and then as soon as you put one of these cases in the assignments tab here, you can set a date for them to go out. So if you don't want them to do this one until like next week, it'll appear in pending. Then as soon as it gets activated, it'll go to in progress, and all of your students will get that in an email, and then they can either open it from their own headset or they can just simply do it in a browser. And it looks very similar to what it looked like in the headset, just without as much immersion.
Yeah.
And then you can see all the ones that have been completed. Don't really have a class or anything right now, so this isn't showing up anything for us. But, so if we go to cases, we see these exact same cases that we had before, a ton of different pre-made ones that the actual program comes with. And so you can take these templates and you can do what I've done with this one where I've just duplicated it, and then that will allow us to go down here and see and completely edit it. But before that, if we go into grades, we can see the people that have completed this one. So we can see this one that I just did. And if we click on it, we'll get a whole grade report of what exactly I did wrong.
So where'd you mess up?
So apparently I messed up.
Yeah, you can resize that.
Yeah, I need to just see this last little bit. Somewhere probably towards the very end. So yeah, there's some stuff that I had to avoid, some stuff that I had to do. I missed.
Let me fix this screen really quickly. I can make this look better for you.
Alrighty. Ah, perfect.
Yeah. Oh no, why is it still cropped?
Yeah, while you're fixing that, I did see what I missed. Really, the only thing that I missed in that is when I was going through those questions, explaining them, I just did it a little too slow, and it said that I took too much time to do it. And so it just didn't give me the 5 points that all of those questions were worth, and that was just gaining a history of the patient and what exactly happened to them. And so it just didn't like how slowly I did that, which is also something that myself as an admin in this could actually go in and edit and change to make it to where they have more time to do that. It's probably just because it's such a
Oh
small
my
screen
god, it's
currently.
literally cut off.
So
Duh.
here,
I'm so sorry.
there
This
we
is
go.
terrible. This is terrible content. Everyone enjoy. We're called Neophyte Studios for a reason. There we go.
There we go.
That looks about right for
Yep.
us.
Okay, so yeah, we can see down here, it was just this,
You can click onto the browser.
oh, yep.
Yeah.
It's just this history that I've missed. So that was the only thing that was missed on it. But then, so if we return to the cases, we can go in and we can actually look into the back end of how these programs are edited. So when you go to edit, you get this whole list of things that you can change. And so starting up here, you have the scenario. You can change the name of the case, who exactly your patient is. They have a whole lot of people with varying ethnicities and ages and body types as well.
And those are pretty damn nice models.
Mhm. Yeah, they have a whole lot of stuff to choose from.
Yeah.
But so you can also choose the scene you want to start at. There's a whole list of scenes that you can choose. Go to like a gymnasium, just about anything, and they're all
Honestly,
fully
the
made.
quality of these areas lends a lot to the realism of the simulations.
Yeah, and then they have and then you can also choose the place where they are transferred to. You probably normally wouldn't transfer them to like, a random city park, but you can choose between different ambulances, or also I believe they have an emergency room as well that you can be transported to. So this is just like I said in the beginning, the information that's given to you right before you start. It has some learning objectives, which you want the patients, or not the patients, the students to take away from something like this. So here you can get into, when I showed the physical assessment, you can get into exactly selecting sections of the patient's body and then what that's going to read out to the student. So if I wanted to go in here for upper right arm and be like decapitated, or not decapitated,
Severed. Removed.
yes, severed,
Yeah.
removed, whatever.
Yeah.
You could just put that in there, and then in soon updates, you'll actually have different things you can choose that will actually show that on the model instead of just writing it out as text.
And that's something I'm like particularly looking forward to.
Yeah, the art that they already have done for it is very, very good, and it looks really great. And then here you can change basically all the conditions, how they're found. So this patient was found laying down and unconscious.
Yeah.
You can change it to all these different behaviors. They can be coughing, crying, depressed, having a seizure, anything. And
So how did depress? Oh, as behavior.
yeah,
Okay, so like it'll influence their dialogue, things like that, assumedly.
yeah, it'll mainly be how the model is moving around in the environment.
Okay.
And so then you can give all these different heart rhythms that show up on your heart monitor.
Yeah.
They have a ton of different stuff to choose from. How this waveform looks for their CO2 output, and then just in general temperature, respiration rate, oxygen levels, and these are all the baseline stuff that you are then trying to affect.
And the more options, like this is so modular. You can get so granular.
Yeah.
It's so impressive. This is, I'll say here on SIU, we've talked a lot about creating something very similar to this to use to train our students. And this is such a glowing example of what we've been discussing.
Yeah, and then you can go into things like chest sounds. You can assign a different sound for each lobe that you can take a stethoscope and listen to.
That is ridiculous.
They have all different sounds for everything, for the lungs as well as the heart.
Wow. Like genuinely, wow.
Yeah. So go into questions. It's a little more boring. You can just kind of type in your own questions here.
I mean, maybe
the
to
patient's
you,
answers.
this is what I'm here for.
But yeah, you can, and then you can turn on which ones they'll see, and then these are all ones that'll be activated in the logic that I'll show in just a minute. They have ones that you can choose from a list, or you can just type your own, and the voice and the text to voice will do it for you.
And we're coming up on our time here. We got about 5 minutes.
Okay. This is IV stuff, so we could turn this on, and you can select from all this other stuff. This is more of an advanced life support thing. And then this is really cool, as soon as you activate something that doesn't play nicely with the case logic, it will tell you, and it won't actually let you save until you fix these errors.
And like this user interface, it really does just feel like you're using Unreal Engine or something. And when you get into the logic, it's essentially blueprints. It's really, really nice.
And then if we go into medications, they have all these different medications you can choose from and just turn on. You can turn on all of them for a certain medication, or just certain routes. So like with aspirin, you can give it through an IV or orally, or you can turn on everything.
That is a nice looking
And there's
UI.
a lot of ones to choose from. And you can actually make your own medications as well and choose exactly how they affect patients.
Wow.
Oxygen's pretty simple, just different oxygen routes that you can use for any situation. This one only allowed me to pick between BVM and non-rebreather, which are the two that I needed. Procedures, this is mainly just PPE and different other things that you can do to the patient. monitors. These are the different heart monitors that you can choose from. So they have a few different actual heart monitors that have been modeled into the game or into the software.
That's what we call polish.
And then this is the media section that I talked about earlier. You can see the 12 lead readout that's given here. And you can just add anything else just as like a JPEG or PNG file.
Yeah.
And then this is the real like important part of the grading. And so these are all, you can basically choose every little thing that the student can do in the scenario and assign a grade to it. So you can choose whether or not it has no effect, they need to do it, or they have to avoid it, and then how many points that's going to be worth. Need at 0 points is basically the same thing as saying no effect. But if they need it, you can make it a critical action. So even if it's not worth points, if they don't do it, they're going to fail it. And that's what happened with me asking those certain questions. I didn't do it quick enough. And even though they weren't worth any points, or actually I think they were worth 5 points, but even if they weren't worth any points, it would still fail me just because I didn't do that one thing.
So as we move like to the end here with the case logic, what's kind of your final evaluation as somebody that just went through the training? Yeah,
I mean, this is extremely helpful. Like, this is something that I wish I had access to when I was in my class just this past summer. Just being able to go through this in a more realistic scenario and go through the motions of it. Like, you have to do assessment. You have to be quizzed on your assessment skills, which is really hard because a lot of times, especially with COVID, we didn't have a person laying down as a patient. It was just a dummy. And you couldn't really do anything to it. And you just kind of had to look at the person grading you and be like, I'm going to start giving them oxygen with a non-rebreather. And they would be like, okay, they have their oxygen mask on.
Just so awkward.
And so this is it's a lot more realistic, and you really get through, because it's so much of it is just about doing things in the correct order.
Right.
And knowing how to do it, when to do it, and just getting that done in a timely manner. And this just makes it so much easier to get more immersed in it and feel and just remember everything a lot better.
And so, okay, that's all awesome. That's all amazing. Criticisms. What do you got?
I mean, I think, like, it's kind of a couple criticisms aren't as fair just because, like I know some of the things like, oh, the patient that's unconscious just sits up whenever you go to check their pupils. But, like, that's something that can be fixed.
Right, right.
I've run into a few issues with some cases where, like, I treated them correctly and then, or maybe I just didn't, but sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what a case wants you to do.
Yeah.
And so there were a couple cases that I kept failing because it was saying that I failed to evaluate the patient's response to a certain treatment.
Right.
And then when I come in here and look at the logic of a case, it says that new questions are supposed to open up for me to ask them after I've treated them. And they just never came up for me. So kind of a criticism. It could just be something on my part that I'm doing wrong. But I guess if there's any main criticism to take out of this, it's just that it's a little difficult to figure out exactly what a certain scenario wants from you. But then again, this is something that you can go in and completely change on your own if you don't like the way it's doing it. Every state has their own protocols that they give for every EMS service in there. And actually every service has their own protocols. So you can go in and change all of these scenarios to match exactly what your local system wants you to do, which is super helpful. And this is actually where you would do it. This is the whole logic of it. Like, this is all just in this box.
Do you have any, like, coding experience at all, like, whatsoever?
I do not.
Okay.
None.
And so digging into here, how accessible?
It's super accessible. I mean, it's all just boxes. I mean, it does get very complex, but it's nothing that you couldn't... It's not like I can't understand it. Like, it's just a lot to take in. However, if I go to a certain... if I go to a certain node, I can follow it. When oxygen is administered, check that it was the right route. After 45 seconds, it'll check it again.
Right.
And then it will grade you. So the effect of this check is that it grades you 1 point that you had to do for giving oxygen.
That's just a really nice, very clear visual scripting. And all on the right side of the screen there, are those all, like, just more nodes you can add, options?
Yeah, I think these are actually all the ones that are in there. So if I were to click on one, it should take me right to it.
Okay.
And what's also really nice is if I go back to grading and I go down here to the one that I missed, it was this ample that's performed. I can actually go right to that node in the case logic as it loads in.
Or it should, yeah.
Just gotta let it load in. Yep, and it will show me exactly where that node is that I missed.
Yeah.
And then I can zoom out a little bit and see what exactly it was that it wanted me to do. And so I just didn't ask these questions.
Yeah.
And so it didn't give me that grade. And
Well,
so
that's absolutely killer.
yeah, it's easy to go through and really look at what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And which is why for those past cases that I said I couldn't figure out, I think I just need to play around with the logic a little more
And really
see
pin
exactly
down.
what it is that I'm missing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
This is a cool program, and I'm glad you reached out to them as an
Mhm.
undergraduate. It's most impressive, my good sir.
Yeah, it's really
Um,
great.
So, any final thoughts? Like, would you recommend this for a program as it is right now?
Yeah, I mean, I really would. And especially like right now in like pandemic times,
Right.
this is so well made for like a class environment where you have seats in your class. Like I have a certain amount of seats in here that I can assign to people, and you basically just set the assignment when it's going to go live, and then it sends that email to everybody in your class. They complete it by a certain time, they get a grade, you get a grade, and then you can look in this software. If you're not sure what you did wrong, you can just go back and look and see where you went wrong,
Yeah.
and just really easily see what you did wrong and perfect this so you can pass it on your national exams.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really great tool for that. And to be able to do this at home and not have to go and work with another person, because that's one thing that was hard for us
Right.
in my class, was that we had to get so much practice doing these assessments. But in a class of about like 25 of us, maybe, there was only 3 instructors that could do assessments, and you just
Oh.
kind of had to wait for your turn to do it. And having something like this would give you a lot, would just allow you to do practice, as much as
Right.
you want. You don't have to have another person to make sure you're doing everything correctly, because all the logic and grading will do it for you.
So, like, this built with the previously established way of doing things, like add this in as extra
Yeah.
training,
Yeah.
like asynchronous training,
Exactly.
realistically.
Because
Yeah.
you still need the in-person experience to know exactly how they're going to do it at the
Yeah.
national level. Because I don't really see them turning to something like this at a national level
Yeah.
for quite a while. Like it'll probably still be an in-person assessment. However, it's so nice that it still follows the exact same rules as a national assessment would, in a more fun and immersive way of doing it.
That's really cool. Like, I'm absolutely overjoyed. Well, thank you for coming on Neophyte. Any other last thoughts?
I don't think so. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the demo, and I'm sure
Mhm.
everyone else will too. Yeah, if you're watching this back on the VOD to see a review of VR Patients, I hope this was effective and informative. Of course, my understanding is this program is still in development to a degree.
Oh, yeah.
It's still subject to change, so, this is October of 21. This is where it is right now. Hopefully it's even polished and better in the future.
Yeah, and even like I haven't had a ton of time working with it, and just I'm sure there's so much more that I haven't even dove into yet, and
Yeah.
especially with a lot of the paramedic stuff that you get into, like starting IVs and all the different medications you can choose, is just, it goes super in depth, and I've really only scratched the surface of everything, that all the different cases and scenarios you can do in it, and you can just change them to be honestly anything you want. And so my experience isn't even all that they can do, and they're still working on adding so much more to it. So
Yeah.
it's a really promising and already really good program, in my opinion.
That's fantastic. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this quick demo, quick general review. Again, we've been Neophyte Studios. Today we're streaming from our beautiful new VR lab over on SIU's campus. I think you should see Jay slaying monsters in the background. We'll be streaming from here in the future. I know this channel has been pretty silent for a while, but we got a few things lined up, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Everyone, thank you very much. And